Hey, it's Alessandro Nivola here. You can join me on the Rock and Goal podcast, and we'll be talking about soccer, football, and music, and
The Many Saints of Newark.
The Many Saints of Newark, which is the film that my next film I got coming out. Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. I did these two movies called Goal and Goal 2 that were these Disney football films made a bunch of years ago, and which I agreed to be in because they told me I was going to get. Initially, I was going to get to train with Alan Shearer and all the Newcastle boys, and because the first film, my character was a player for Newcastle, and then the sequel was going to be down at Real Madrid, and I was going to tour the Far East with all the Galacticos, and so sure enough, I had this unbelievable experience on both those films, and as far as close encounters go with a lot of my footballing heroes, and then, as a result of being in that thing, Robbie Williams asked me if I wanted to play in the very first UNICEF charity match that he had set up called Soccer Aid. And this must have been, 10 years ago or something. And it was just unbelievable. And he was like the greatest players of all time, and me. And
reminds you that the film Escape to Victory, when you had the actors trying to be footballers, like Sly Stallone trying to. He wasn't a bad player, was he? All right.
I was just going to ask you, actually, in order to be in a film like that, did you have to have a degree of footballing talent? I mean, because you obviously had to appear in scenes with live action of football, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't think that was a prerequisite, but I had grown up playing. My dad was Italian, and I'd played all my life, and that was really the reason that I wanted to be in the movie. I mean, it turned out to be a great role. It's one of the roles I'm most proud of in my career, even though the films are kind of, formulaic, and there's a certain type of feel-good kind of movie and everything. But the role was really kind of an anarchic soul, this guy, and had a lot of opportunity for sort of some comic stuff that was
he was the womanizer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was like a sort of bad boy, one of these guys who you see on every team seems to have one who's just always getting in trouble, and who's supremely talented, but just his own worst enemy, but also kind of has a heart of gold, and when the chips are down, kind of sticks his neck out in the right way. He's sort of a Han Solo kind of.
Which of the footballers could act? Can you remember? Any good at?
Which of the footballers can act?
Or had to act?
Yeah, there wasn't too much that was required of them. David Beckham did a little cameo, and he did great. But I remember him saying, I'm so nervous. And he kept saying, I'm so nervous.
That's a good accent.
My heart's pounding in my chest. And but he did great. And there was like one scene we did with him and Zidane and Raul in a bar, and where we were just sort of hanging out, having a drink after one of the matches or something. But he, it wasn't like, he didn't have to cry or anything like that. But
he did a few times when he was playing for England.
Yeah. But no, it was so it was an amazing thing. And so the next thing I knew, I was on this team with Gianfranco Zola, and then we had this connection because of my family, and so we really hit it off at that time. And I mean, by the end of it, he gave me his testimonial shirt that he'd worn in that match, and the boots that he played in the match that I played in it with him.
Yeah, okay.
Which were tiny.
Yeah.
I still have them.
He's a legendary figure, Zola, wasn't he? Fantastic player, an awful manager. Brilliant. I mean, my own club, he had a very bad spell. Birmingham.
He was at Watford as well, of course.
Of
Took
course
us to the playoff final, but we lost.
That's right. Well, Birmingham was a complete disaster, but what a fabulous player.
He was one of the kind of most creative and enjoyable players to watch, just because he was so full of tricks and flair and style, and he was also so kind of humble and just such a lovely man, just a great, great guy. And he was throughout those 2 weeks that we trained together. He always kept telling me to just like calm down and like work your way into the match. That was his main advice for me, because I would come out there running around like an idiot.
Tell us about your role then. So it's the prequel to The Sopranos, which is one of the most successful and best rated TV series of all time in many people's eyes. And so it's set before that series starts, and you play a relation of one of the stars, the Moltisanti?
So what David Chase did, which is such a kind of clever way in, was to write an origin story of Tony Soprano told through a character that was dead before the series began. So that the central focus of the film is on a character that, is not being recreated as a younger incarnation of himself in the series. And that takes a lot. It gives him all kinds of license to, tell a story that isn't bound to every detail that had already been laid out in the series. Although there are a lot of the characters from the series in younger form. This guy, Dickie Moltisanti, is the father of Christopher Moltisanti, who is a character played by Michael Imperioli in the show.
You're playing Dickie, right?
I'm playing Dickie. And this is it's set in 1967 in Newark, and this was a time when the mob was a whole different style. Everybody's in suits and ties and tie clips and a lot of jewelry, and there were it was a very tricky time with civil rights at that moment, and there was a lot of tension between the Italians and the blacks, because this neighborhood in North Newark had been, in the late 19th century, heavily populated by Italian immigrants who had moved in there. And then a lot of black people had been relocated by the government into these public housing buildings that were built up there in the 60s. And it really sparked off a lot of violence between them, and that's the kind of backdrop to the film. But Dickie is referred to throughout the series as somebody that Tony just idolized, and somebody who had really mentored Tony, and that's why Tony, is for such a long time so willing to overlook Christopher's failings because of loyalty to Christopher's dad. And so this explores that relationship, but that's just one part of the story. There's
the whole sort of mob thing. When you're playing the role, did you sort of feel a bit informed by, there's a lot of, sort of cliches, The Godfather and all those things. Did you sort of feel as though you've got to be doing something a little bit different, or was that as it was?
David's script is so original and so particular in the way that it's written and its language, that all I had to do was be true to that, to the story he was telling and the language that he used to tell it. I didn't feel any of the sort of pressure to try and like vanquish the memories of the great mob movies or anything. I felt like from the very beginning that I was part of something that was highly original and poetic. And it really was a great gift to me as an actor. I think the greatest of my career so far. And then Michael Gandolfini, James Gandolfini's son, is playing him as a young man. We've become very, very close through the time that we spent working on this together, and I really admire him because to take on this role in this context is something that is really scary thing to do, and a lot of pressure on him because his dad was so beloved and the series was so beloved, and to put yourself in that position is takes a lot of courage, and he really handled it with so much grace, and he was just such a cool customer about it. He was full of affection and wanting to kind of not let his dad down and everything. I mean, I was just aware of the weight of the situation for him, and the fact that he'd taken on this role, but he never kind of was anything except just daring as an actor and just in it. And I never felt like he was just kind of like the whole thing was just getting too much for him, or that it was that he was too frightened of failure or anything like that. He was just totally committed and just a wonderful guy. So.
Are you sort of stereotypes, Italian Americans, the mob and all the rest of it, all those films we've mentioned, and one or two. I mean, even though The Sopranos was, as you said, a much loved series, and one or two people sort of criticised it, perhaps for Italian Americans are not all like that. Is that something you had to consider?
Well, I don't think that anybody's claiming that Italian Americans are all like that. This is...
Yeah, but you got a machine gun in the corner of your room.
I've made much... I've talked a lot about my own personal history and my own father's family in interviews in the past. And, he came from a very unique family of, in fact, my dad's experience was really very similar to Robert De Niro's experience, who I worked with a bunch of years ago, playing his son in the Bernie Madoff film that Barry Levinson directed called The Wizard of Lies. I was here in London doing The Elephant Man with Bradley Cooper at that time, and he had been on some guy he knew had loaned him this yacht that was, I guess, docked in the Mediterranean down by Corsica, and they were trying to figure out a way for me to get down there to go and meet him, I guess, for lunch, and then fly back in time for my show, and it just wasn't going to work. And anyway, I ended up there ended up being a 3-day weekend, and I was supposed to just go down for one afternoon and then fly home that night, and I got down there, and there were all these his closest friends and family there, and then me, and I was there basically on an audition, but he and nobody else knew why the hell I was there or who I was or what I was doing there, and he sat me next to him at lunch and just didn't say a word the whole time. He's a shy person, and once you get to know him and you have a familiar rapport, it's completely different. But when you first meet him, and he's not like the most comfortable person socially, and it's not because of any kind of feelings of superiority or disdain or anything. He's just, I think, a little bit awkward until he feels comfortable from getting to know you. And so I sat next to him through this lunch, and he didn't mention the movie or anything, and so I just didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. And then after lunch, everybody just disappeared, and I guess went off into their cabins to take a nap, and I didn't have a cabin because I was supposed to be leaving right after lunch, and so I just found myself roaming around this boat, and it was completely empty and abandoned. And then at one point I looked up, and there was there were several tiers of balconies or whatever on this boat, and I looked up about 3 levels up, and I saw him kind of peering down over at me, and I felt like Gaylord Fokker in Meet the Parents or something, where I was sort of waving up at him, and he was trying to figure out what he made of me, I guess. And then he ended up inviting me to stay for the whole 3 days that we were there, and it became a kind of long weekend of extreme sporting activities, all of which seemed to me to be like a test of my manhood. We'd be out jet skiing, and then I'd see him come up next to me on his jet ski, and he had this very determined look in his eye, and then he would go a little faster, and then I would go a little faster, and it just felt like so, are you up to this? Are you up to this? And then, like, at one point, he went to jump off. He said, my sons and I are going to jump off the bow of the boat. You want to come? And, his son, like, one of his sons was, like, 12 years old. And we climb up this top of this bow of this boat. And it's, like, 50 feet off the sea level. And, like, in no time, the kid, like, the 12-year-old kid just, like, hurls himself off it. Next thing, like, De Niro comes and, like, does this sort of swan dive, perfect, no splash in there. And then he's, like, down there treading water and looking up at me and sort of waving me in. And, this thing was so high. I felt like I was going to throw up. And, I sort of held my balls in my hand and pointed my toes and went feet first and like a total loser. And he came in, like, he gave me a kiss on both cheeks and, and he said, "See you, kid," or something. And as I was driving away, I was trying to think, like, is that the, like, does that mean I'm in, or is that like the Fredo kiss?
It's goodbye.
It's a great story. Come on, you're a music fan too. We're going to come back to the football and the Maradona story. A great story about Diego Maradona. But Bob Dylan, tell you what, play us a song first, and then we'll hear your stories about Bob Dylan.
You're a proper guitarist, singer. You're a man of many talents. What Dylan song are you going to give us, you think?
Well, I've been plucking away on this while I've been doing this film here in London these past couple of months. I've got the guitar's tuned right now to play to Buckets of Rain, which is an open D.
It's from Blood on the Tracks, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So might have to play that one.
Okay. Well, it's outside. We're in West London. It's raining at the moment. This is Alessandro Nivola and Buckets of Rain.
Buckets of rain, buckets of tears, got all them buckets coming out of my ear. Buckets of moonbeam in my hand. You got all the love, honey, baby, I can stay. Like your smile, your fingertip, like the cool way you move your hips, like the cool way you look at me. Everything about you is bringing me misery.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. Actually,
man of many talents.
Actually, Sandro, your brother-in-law is someone I've known for a very, very long time indeed. George Fajestica. He was. We worked together at a local radio station in Stoke-on-Trent many years ago. And of course, he's now the guitarist in Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Right.
So has he taught you, or are you learning off him, or is he learning off you?
I mean, he's so in a different stratosphere that it's the idea of my even learning something from him is absurd. But we do play together sometimes. He has no, he doesn't lord it over me or anything. And in fact, we did a gig together. We actually have a band.
Oh yeah.
We're called the In-Laws.
Okay.
And we played one gig, which was the Crooked Billet restaurant out in Stoke Row. It's
East London somewhere.
In the country.
No. It's in the country.
Oh, right.
Out sort of, in Oxfordshire. And we did a night of covers together about 5 years ago.
What sort of stuff were you playing?
Oh, yeah, everything from Paul Simon to... We did some of George's originals.
He's a big, huge Bowie fan, isn't he? Did George?
Yeah. I'm sure we did a David Bowie song. We did. I should dig out our set list, but it was quite.
Release a live album.
It was no joke. It was like a full
Seriously.
crowd, and we had to we rehearsed for quite some time. But no, he's just an insane guitar player, like touched. And I was talking to him recently, and he was telling me about growing up in Stoke, son of immigrants himself.
That's right, they're from Croatia, I think.
Yeah, Serbo-Croat, and he, nobody in his family had any kind of musical talent or aspirations, and his dad had given him a guitar when he was a kid just by chance. But he said by 13 years old that he was technically as good as he is right now, which is just mind-blowing.
He left Signal about 18 years old to seek his fame and fortune in London, and of course he's ended up in one of the greatest bands in the world. I mean, they're doing a huge tour. Are you going to be able to go and see them? I think one of them's on George's birthday, actually, in Birmingham.
Absolutely. No, I wouldn't miss any of these tours. And the shows are so spectacular too. They're, Nick is such a showman, and they really have a kind of edge to them and a theatricality that is just so entertaining. So. And George is really like a big fixture and such a crucial part of that band, and he and Nick have a kind of cool rapport on stage too. So no, it's one of the perks of having him as a brother-in-law.
So from showman on the stage to showman on the football field, I always think of Diego Maradona, Armando Maradona, and you talk about the film, your new film, The Many Saints of Newark. When Maradona was in Naples, it was. I read somewhere it was like a dark magic, that they were made for each other. The mob, the Camorra, that's right, yeah. Very, very closely involved with, and there was all kinds of allegations of corruption. You met him, didn't you?
What did you make? We played 90 minutes together.
Yeah. Did he
at
say
Old
much?
Trafford, in which he never tied his shoelaces the entire match. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. He let them just flap around while he was playing. And he was fit at that time. Like he had been unfit, and then he'd gotten fit again around the time of that match. And he played a full 90 minutes on a field with like a lot of young guys running around. But again, he never tied his shoelaces. No, he was. We had trained for 2 weeks prior to the match with all of these other legendary players like Lothar Matthäus and Dunga and Ruud Gullit and Zola and Peter Schmeichel, and my team was the rest of the world team against the England legends, and the other team had Gaza and John Barnes, all these guys, and Gaza, who by the way just kicked me when we were. I kept making these runs down the right, and at one point he kicked me and just like floored me, and I got up and I was like, "Come on, man, it's a friendly match."
What did he do?
And he just said something like, something along the lines of like, "Well, you won't be making those runs again."
You did that to Gary Charles in the cup final, didn't you, as well?
How long
so you were holding your own, were you, with these players? I mean, the fact that Gaza feels it necessary to chop you down means you must be after.
Well, I in my time, I had some pace. I've definitely slowed down since then, but hold your own is a relative term. I mean, I was on the pitch with them, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. Do you follow a club? I mean, being Italian American, I mean, the MLS in the States is getting better now. But do you follow an Italian club or not?
Well, I mean, Cagliari, I've always followed just because of my father.
The heritage.
But all of his family are Inter fans.
Okay.
And I'm friends with Angelo Moratti, who is, Massimo Moratti's nephew, and so I've met that family and all that kind of thing, and so I have a kind of fondness for them. But I'm a pretty kind of neutral supporter of the game. I can't really get enough of the game, but I don't really have a club.
But when the World Cup comes on, who are you pulling for, the US or the Italians?
If they were playing each other,
tricky one, eh?
Yeah. I mean, I always really want the US to do well, partly because they're underdogs in the football world, and so it's fun to support the underdog. And partly because whenever the U.S. does well, it's such a boost for the interest in the game in the U.S., but it really looked like we had a foothold about 10 years ago or so, and that things were going to kind of. I was predicting that around this time we were going to be poised to be able to win a World Cup, just because it looked like there was such an influx of young players, and there was just so much more interest in soccer in America than there ever had been when I was growing up. And I just thought, like, with the population, the size that it is, and the athleticism of American athletes, like, it can only be a matter of time. And they've just gotten worse. And so it's very disappointing.
But down the line, I mean, you got the likes of Christian Pulisic now at Chelsea.
I know, well, he's
they've
just
got some
a
good
phenomenal player, but there's something about the system that they have not solved, and Klinsmann really didn't figure it out and kind of set the whole thing back, and since he's been gone, it just feels like it's in disarray, and it's such a. It's just a shame. It really is, because that if you look at now these. Young people in schools all over the country are playing soccer. And there's also a problem now with American football and all the concussion issues and stuff. Yeah. And so I'm sure that there's more and more kind of great athletes getting siphoned off by a game like soccer that doesn't, present the same problems to your kind of long-term health and everything.
Which players do you admire currently? Who do you enjoy watching at the moment?
Mo Salah is probably my favorite. He's just there's something about his style and his ease and his kind of joy. I love his attitude, and it's like he embodies that kind of Zen thing of trying really hard but not trying at all. I don't know. There's something about him that seems like that.
Effortless. You said Messi was a favorite.
Oh, well, Messi. I mean, Messi's just the greatest player of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
Maradona.
And Maradona too, Pele too. I met Pele, by the way, as well. I was a kid in Long Island. I was playing tennis with my dad on a public tennis court, and there was this guy playing next to us, and I was sure it was Pele, and my dad was just like, "No way, that's not Pele." And I'm like, "Dad, it's come on, man, just go ask him." And he was like, "I'm not gonna ask him if he's Pele, if he's not Pele."
Excuse me, are you Pele?
He's just what he's gonna think that I think all black people look the same or something, And I was like, "Come on, I know it's him, And so he would end up. He was like, "Listen, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but are you Pele?" And he goes, "Yes, I am Pele." And sure enough, it was him. And he gave me this autograph, and I was only about 8 years old or whatever, and I had it for a while, and I lost it. And it just kills me. But but Messi to me is just he brings it to the level of art, and it's just oh man.
As an artist, Jay, it's hard to argue against him as an artist. But the argument against him is that he doesn't carry teams like Diego did. I mean, he carried Napoli so well in Argentina.
And Argentina
you can't argue against that. In my
totally
opinion.
Disagree. I think that may be true on the international stage, but international football now is just so kind of lame compared to what it used to be. The focus is so much more on club football.
Yeah, that's true.
If you look at Barcelona, to say he hasn't carried that team is just crazy to me. I mean, the guy, look at the number of goals he's scored for them, the number of games he's won for them, the number of titles he's won for them. I mean, you just can't argue that. And then on the international thing, I mean, that team has just been in such disarray for such a long time that it's just not fair to judge the guy for that. It just doesn't make any sense. They don't have a system of playing, and they haven't built a system to play around him, and that's the fault of management and the football setup there much more than it. Because if you look at Barcelona, I mean, those teams are all built around him, and it works.
Yeah. You know what it's like in this country. Everyone wants to know who you support, and it's the essence of our game, and our club rivalries are so fantastic. Here we are sitting in West London. I'm going to ask you: do you follow an English club or not?
Bill Kenwright is a friend of mine, and he produces theater as well as owning Everton Football Club, and so I have a place in my heart for that team. But I don't really
That's Everton.
but I don't really I don't really have a team. I had, for a while when I was first living here, Zola was playing for Chelsea, and so I actually had a season ticket to Chelsea one year, maybe 15 years ago. But
before they were good.
Once they, it really was. And in fact, when they got good, I kind of lost interest in them a little bit, because it was, Abramovich was one of the first really rich guys to come in and buy up a club, and it just started, that was the moment that football changed in this country, and where money just became so pervasive in those top clubs and made it impossible for the other teams to compete, and the system just became so kind of rigged in a way. And Chelsea was really the first team to just, have a rich guy come in and just buy, a title, basically. And there's something about it kind of made me sick, and so I just sort of lost interest.
You talk very passionately and eloquently about football, and obviously, in your role as an actor, there's lots of expression there. The thought just occurs to me: there aren't too many people on this planet who've performed alongside both Robert De Niro and Diego Maradona. That's quite a claim to fame, isn't it?
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that you've laid it out for me, I got to say I feel pretty proud of it.
Alessandro, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We're going to wish you all the very best for what's going to be a busy year with the Many Saints of Newark and your guitar playing as well. So I think we'll leave it on this rainy day in London with a bit of Bob Dylan, and
don't think twice, it's all right.
Great talking to you.
Cheers.
Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe, even you don't know by now. Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe, it'll never do somehow. When your rooster crows at the break of dawn, look out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason that I'm traveling on, so don't think twice, it's okay. Beautiful. Fantastic.